Welcome to this 123Twine 2 intro using Harlowe. It's a companion video to the 2017 UVA Saturday Series narrative gaming class that I taught for 4th and 5th graders. It's meant to be a simple summary tailored specifically to 8 to 10-year-olds, covering a small slice of what Twine can do. To teach this 5-week class, I used 5 sample projects that demo elements of Twine 2 scripting, all archived to the class wiki. On my YouTube channel, there is also a video about how to use this wiki. Sample Twine snippets are not complete stories, and in fact, some have bugs left in to show kids what can happen. I'll show you parts of these story snippets in this video to give you an idea of where to find Twine scripting in action, so you can copy to your own story, Control-C to a notepad document, and then Control-V to copy to your passage. First, we're going to start out by taking a look at Piper. So Piper was inspired by the animated Disney short, and the way this one works, very, very simple. We introduce the concept of formatting, text and background, and aliasing links, which Twine calls hooks. So you see it looks like a basic web page. So basically the day had come, and you can see I have a macro, which is a code packet that HTML understands that Twine uses that tells the text what to do. And I have it here for action and for font and for highlighting the background of the text itself. So here we have our links, which Twine calls hooks. So do what you've always done. You never learn to take care of yourself. The end, and then I have the story loop back to try again, to go back to the very beginning. So that's kind of the basic concept of Twine, is it lets you give different branches to your story. So I want to show you the background of how I scripted this, so you know when you go to the snippet in the wiki what project has what kind of scripting. So here we have a story start. When I was talking about macros, this is where I called text style as a macro, and I had to tell it what type. Here is an example of a font macro and a background macro. Here is where I was talking about the hooks. Hooks are start with square braces, beginning and end. So you see the square braces here, square braces here. And in this case, I could have just said, "Do not grow up," because that's the name of the passage that it's connected to. But in this case, I renamed it, because you might want to keep your passage name short so that you don't makes it easier to understand on the story grid. And then you can call it something else, which kind of adds to your story, and you can be specific to each passage. It doesn't have to be the same name, whereas this has to be the same name, passage to passage. So I'll show you what I mean. You saw, remember, we could add passages by clicking on this little green plus, or if you simply, and I'm going to do it for purposes of demonstrating, add it directly in the passage. So here's on the second row of your keyboard next to the P key, I type 2 square braces. I'm going to put test. And you'll see it kind of tried to help me out there, right? It knows the name of the other passages. If you double click on them and you want it to be called that, you could do that. But if you're creating a new one, you're just going to go with what you want to call it. And if I click on the X, remember Twine saves as you go along, it will create a passage, right? So that's another way to do it. Now you can kind of move these around. Now I don't really want to keep this because that's not really part of my story, so if I did that and I said, oops, I don't want to do that, click on the little garbage can and it gets rid of it. The other thing about Piper is, and it gave me, because I didn't get rid of test. See how it turned red? Because it said, oh, I don't know where to go because you got rid of it. So I have to take it out of where I referenced it to. There you go. The other part about Piper that we used was this style sheets. And you can't really see it in here, but on the little button I clicked on the bottom left, Edit Story Style Sheet, and you'll see you can change the background color. So there's an example in the wiki in a text file called CSS where we changed the background color to be white. And you can do that with different ways of playing with the inspect element of your project. So if you to do that, what you're going to do is right click and you see inspect, and this should pop up. There we go. And this is where, when we were in class trying to figure out what to call the style sheet instructions, it's this little block here where my And you kind of play around with that, and you'll see when you change it, it changes it here too. So it's kind of cool. And this is what you can do to any web page, by the way. So it's just one of those things that was kind of good to introduce to kids to see the concept of being adventuresome and just kind of exploring a little bit. The next example that we got to was Madeline's game, and that was where we started introducing the concept of using variables in Twine. So I'm going to play this for you, then we'll deconstruct it from the script that I'm showing you here. So you know how to play Mad Libs. Basically, it's a fill-in-the-blank game. So here we have word 1 goes to a passage that's going to take what I place here and make it a variable. So, and it's going to take me to the second word. This is a 3-word game, just to keep it simple. Type in a thing. Oops, typing here. Okay, and so then we had the final Mad Lib, which is where you're going to call all the variables that you defined in the first 3 text boxes. So the other day I walked to Mars with my friends. We started talking about pizza. It's made us think about training puppies. It's kind of silly, but that's kind of the point of Mad Libs, huh? So what we did here is we talked about the concept of how you connect variable passages to the final variable solution. So here, I have my word 1 in my square brackets to create the passage link. And then here's where this is our macro, the set macro that was nested with a prompt macro. So when you do it this way, the answer that you give to the prompt does not display right in the passage, because you really wouldn't want that. You wouldn't want it to pop up until the very end on this Mad Lib hook, right? So all of these word 1, word 2, word 3 are setting their variable $ word 1, 2, or 3. So they all have unique variable names. So you'll see I have word 1 referenced here, and I have word 2 referenced in this one. So when you get to the very final Mad Lib solution, what it's going to do is you just simply type in just plain old text, but you call, what we say reference, call the variable, and it fills in whatever you typed in the text box. And this way you can keep playing the game over and over, and it really doesn't matter. It's always going to just think of, oh, what did that person enter there for this game? The next project sample was a clue game and also a snippet that I called Either. So I'm going to show you quickly both of them here. You can see this is getting a little bit more complex. Anybody who's played Clue, you know it's a process of elimination game. So in this example, I didn't get into keeping track of the characters, and I also hard-coded the solution. So, I mean, that's a simple way to start it, and I didn't want to overwhelm kids with how the game worked, and also wanted to make it a little bit personal. So I added a prompt. Remember from the Mad Lib game we had a prompt, and we're going to make it just a different example of it. So here's a prompt that actually personalizes the game, so it calls whatever I put in there to say, hey, welcome to my name, play my clue game, where you have to figure out who did it. So here is where you would click on the different characters and give maybe some examples about them that would either tell the player they did or they weren't involved in the crime. So when you go to the accused who did it, and I'm just going to make up something, call myself, I know it's not the right name, keep sleuthing, and it also gives you the choice at the end to put all of the who did it with what and where. So this is definitely a very incomplete game, but I wanted to give kids an idea of how to get, what was the mechanics behind trying to make a simple card game into a Twine game, and it's a little bit harder than it looks. The other example I want to show you is the Either macro, because the Either macro gets into keeping track of what's going on in your game. So in this case I used, because an example came up with choosing hair color. So in this approach, what you do is you're trying to keep track of, based on the solution that you picked, or whatever character you've ruled out in your clue game, for example. So what I've got here is I've got a random choice here, and it says randomly it's going to tell me what color hair I have. And so you'll see here that I picked brown. There's 4 choices: brown, black, blonde, or red. So colors left tell me what's there. And so you see when brown shows up, it tells you black, red, or blonde. So I also have it hard-coded with an if statement, which I'll show you in a little bit. So try another color, and it's kind of randomly picking colors. You'll see, here it's picking blonde. If I picked what's left, blonde is going to drop off the list. And then I have it hard-coded with an if statement. If hair color is black, I say, oh, my hair is black today, I like this color, and then it takes me on to the next passage, because this is basically built on a loop. So I'll show you. We talked about in class, if the arrow goes back to itself, that means the passage has a loop. It's going to mean it's going to stay on itself until you tell it to do something with an if statement. So I have set the hair color to either. It's the either macro, which makes it randomly decide whether it's going to display brown, black, red, or blonde. And here's the, my hair color is whatever variable this has picked. You'll see I use these little curly brackets. These take the space that all the scripting will take up through your interface, because if you don't put them, then my text is going to be displayed way down the bottom of the page. So this says, oh, just ignore this white space, we call it. So I have set the inventory. This is what's keeping track of things, and the macro for that is an A colon, brown, black, red, or blonde. So if the hair color here randomly contains black, remember we talked, it has to be named specifically the name that it's called. I like this color, happy with new hair, go to the new passage. But if it doesn't, you're going to stay on this passage to try another color, to give it a choice to pick another one randomly for you. And it's this hook down here that lets you check what color hair do I have. Lastly, I have a magic box snippet, and what it does is it's going back to prompts again and loops, and some animated random text and some HTML formatting to change how your project looks. We talked about how Twine 2 isn't really ready to do adding images. But there are certain tricks you can do to enhance what the passage itself looks like on a very simple level. So in this case, we found a golden box. I wondered how to open it, and you have to click on this link several times before it will progress forward. And it's going to keep track for you. That's the other thing. So I mystery tap on it, and see I have a different name for the same link depending on the number of times it's been clicked. And I'll show you how I did that in a minute. So here's just a little text box. It's not asking me to do anything. It just says, hey, I'm going to tell you something. And here I have, if a certain name, in this case Larry, is typed, it's going to say something. If you have another name typed in, it'll say another thing, and I'll show you that in the background. Hey, your name's Larry, so is mine. Larry, is this what you expected? And you'll see here I've added a line here. That's just simply a break HTML formatting, and I'll show you in the background. And then we have this random text that shows at different intervals. And then we have these links. They don't really go anywhere because I haven't really developed the story. If I had said, it opens, and I had said my name was Jen, you'll see it would say something different, since it recognized Larry, but it doesn't know about Jen. It just says, hi, Jen. Jen, is this what you expected? So behind the scenes on that, we have a loop to start, right? Because we're telling it, you got to stay on here and click on this 3 times. So we talked about using binary 0 and 1, so it just controls what the introduction of the text says. It doesn't keep saying you found this golden box. I wonder how it opens, right? So then we say tries to tries plus 1 represents the variables of the number of times you've clicked on the link, right? So this is where these if statements control that. And then I have magic boxes referenced every time, but I have a different alias. Remember we talked about how you can call your links different things? We can call them different things depending on the number of times you clicked on them too. And so we have here, this is where I have the alert macro, which wasn't interactive, it just told me something and popped up. And here's where I set my variable name to my name, and I had an if-else statement. If your name is Larry, say, hey, your name's Larry, so is mine. Else, just say hi, whatever your name is that you typed in. And then here's the HR, simple HR tag in HTML is what calls that line. And then this is the macro live, and putting that together with the macro either. So this says every 0.5 seconds display one of these 4 words. So this is kind of a quick way to run through Twine. I hope that the kids had a good introduction. I think it's good for starting basic web design, and it's just really a lot of fun to do. So I look forward to more Twiners, and if you have any questions, please post comments to the link. Keep twining.